Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
A very good morning on this scorching Monday morning. We've got some hot politics for you. Yes, the Tory leadership race continues today. We'll be talking to representatives of those leading candidates. There's also a new white paper on drug reform. We'll look at that too, and we'll tell you exactly what's coming up through an exciting day of politics. Did you know there's even a confidence vote in the House of Commons? All to come after the headlines.
A very good morning to you. It is 9:31. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date today on GB News. A Met Office red extreme heat warning has come into effect for much of England today as temperatures are forecast to hit up to 40 degrees Celsius. Schools in several counties, including Nottinghamshire and Hampshire, have closed or they're going to finish early today. Cancellations have been announced on the rail network and some speed restrictions are in place for trains. Network Rail say people should travel only if absolutely necessary. People are being advised to stay inside during the hottest parts of the day. Authorities in Spain and Portugal say more than 1,000 people have been killed in the heat wave, which has lasted nearly a week. Firefighters in Spain, France and Greece are also battling wildfires, which have been exacerbated by the dry conditions. More than 14,000 people have been evacuated in southwestern France in the last week. Now to politics in the UK. The field of candidates in the race to replace Boris Johnson as Conservative Party leader will be whittled down again today as Tory MPs vote in the third secret ballot of the contest. The candidate with the fewest votes will be eliminated. The 5 contenders went head-to-head last night over taxes, the cost of living crisis, and they all made several quite personal attacks at each other in the second televised debate. Rishi Sunak accused Liz Truss and Penny Mordaunt of socialist policies. None of the candidates said they would give Boris Johnson a job in their cabinet if they became Prime Minister. The government's facing a confidence vote in Parliament later amid calls for Boris Johnson to leave Number 10 immediately. If the government is defeated, it would almost certainly trigger a general election. However, it's unlikely. A significant number of Conservative MPs would have to vote against the government or abstain. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now let's head back to Tom for the briefing.
Good morning, it's 9:30 and this is The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, on your TV and your radio. Well, contenders for the leadership of the Conservative Party, the prime ministerial hopefuls, that is, will be whittled down to 4 this evening as MPs are scheduled to vote in a third round of ballots. Yes, MPs will vote between 5 and 7 p.m, with the results declared at 8 p.m, a little bit later today. The lowest-ranking candidate, of course, will be eliminated before a 4th ballot tomorrow. Well, last night saw the final 5 remaining candidates battle it out in a live TV debate hosted by ITV. This was the second TV debate of the contest so far, and it got heated. We'll be hearing from the MPs from every camp throughout the show today and indeed throughout the week. But first, let's get a quick refresher from last night's debate.
Who here would be happy to have Boris Johnson in their cabinet? Please raise your hands. If he wished to serve, would you have Boris Johnson in your cabinet if you were PM?
Serving in government is not easy. It requires taking difficult decisions. Tom has never done that. It's very easy for him to criticise what we've been doing, but we have been out there on the front line.
I've been on the front line in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I've been on the front line of the argument against Putin and against China. I've changed government policy on this.
But you haven't taken any decisions. It's easy to talk. Talking is easy.
This something-for-nothing economics isn't conservative, it's socialism.
Under your plans, we are predicted to have a recession because you have raised tax, it is cutting back on growth, it is preventing companies from investing, and it's taking money out of people's pockets.
And at the moment, we're getting definite promises of jam tomorrow when a lot of people are looking for bread today.
And Liz, in your past, you've been both a Liberal Democrat and a Remainer. I was just wondering which one you regretted most.
My parents were left-wing activists, and I've been on a political journey ever since. I'm the only person on this stage that has won and fought a Labour seat.
I'm telling you.
My constituents do not elect people who are out of touch.
Well, currently third amongst MPs, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is seen as one of the most likely to make the final round. She's the MP for South West Norfolk, that is, since 2010. Truss went to a comprehensive school in Leeds to Oxford University. There, she was elected president of the university's Liberal Democrats before joining the Conservative Party in 1996. Truss has worked as a management consultant, a commercial manager for oil titan Shell, and as deputy director for the Reform Research Trust. While she voted for Remain in the EU referendum, she's secured the backing of leading Brexiteers and is, of course, a prominent free marketeer. Well, I'm joined by one of her backers, Dean Russell, outside the House of Commons now, the MP for Watford, of course. Dean, thank you for joining us this morning. It was a slightly more assured performance from Liz Truss last night. She really went after Rishi Sunak and his tax hikes. Does she think that this blue on blue will be particularly unifying for the Conservative Party come September?
I don't think it's so much blue on blue. I think it's just setting out one stall. And what we saw last night was a very assured performance, because what Liz has got is both the depth and the breadth of experience. And when you look at the role she's had across Cabinet, across the government, she's worked in the Treasury. She's now working as Foreign Secretary. And I've been working with her in that role in the FCDO as what they call a Parliamentary Private Secretary. And I've seen firsthand how that experience has come to the fore. So we want, effectively, on day one, for somebody to be able to crack on, to get on with the job, but to deliver in a way for the British people that they can feel that that delivery is happening. And that really was what she was setting out the stall last night. And of course, that's going to be different from other candidates, but we're so blessed to have so many really good candidates that could go forward with this. But I really feel Liz is the person for the job.
You know, Dean, I've spoken to some of your colleagues who've been wavering in how they think they might vote. And one told me last week that he was unsure to go with the heart or the head. The heart being Liz Truss, but the head being Rishi Sunak. Is the particular issue here that a lot of MPs think that the Truss economic agenda is a lot better than the Sunak one, but Sunak looks a bit more electable than Liz Truss?
I don't think it's so much that. You know, we've all known each other for a long time, some of my colleagues for many, many, many years. And I think what they're now realising as we're going through each round, you've seen the momentum grow, is actually it's beyond just likeability, it's beyond the fantastic reputation that Liz has got within the Conservative Party and across colleagues. But actually they're realising the depth of that experience is really shining through. And we're seeing that in the TV debates, but actually even more so in the hustings. And whenever Liz has done the hustings here in Parliament behind me, I really get that sense afterwards chatting to colleagues that they're realising actually her plan is the one that will work. It's one that actually will deliver us the Conservative agenda that we all want, which is lower taxes, but ultimately it will also help the British people from day one so that they can feel the benefits of having a Conservative government, and that for me is absolutely essential.
Last night, the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak accused Liz Truss of being a socialist. Rishi Sunak said that Liz Truss's tax plans, because they wanted to extend borrowing a little bit further, paying back that COVID debt over a longer period of time, he called that a socialist plan. How do you respond to that?
I don't think it's a socialist plan at all, but what I would say is that COVID brought us unprecedented challenges, and especially through the economy, and we delivered for the British people through that with furlough and many other schemes which we all welcome from the Chancellor, the former Chancellor should I say. However, we now need to look at that in a different way. It wasn't business as usual. This was like a war setting in terms of the funding that was required, and so I think it makes sense to plan that over a payment back over a longer period of time, time to treat it a bit like a war bond and then look at that in that way. And I think that means that we can help people immediately. We've had a really challenging few years as a British public. You know, the pandemic hit us hard. Obviously, the issues with cost of living are rising, and of course, Liz has been on the front when it comes to tackling the war in Ukraine that Russia has unleashed there, totally wrongly so. And so actually what she's saying is that we need to be realistic about what can be done, but people need to feel the benefits right now. And that isn't about putting more debt onto future generations. It's about saying, how do we spread that? How do we do it in a way that helps people now? And as a low tax Conservative, I think actually saying that we're going to cut taxes will help provide investment, it will help businesses feel more reassured, but also it will help the British public right now.
The other criticism of the Foreign Secretary last night is that she was in her youth a Liberal Democrat activist. She became a Tory in 1996, not the best time in the world to become a Tory given what happened in the next year, but also that she voted Remain in 2016. Now, if you're someone on the free market right of the party, why would you back Liz Truss over someone potentially like Kemi Badenoch, who was also saying that taxes should be cut, but who voted Leave in 2016?
I think it's a very easy answer to question to answer, actually. The first thing I'd say is you have to look at the record and the delivery. And Liz is well known within the party for being the person who's been at the very forefront of delivering on the benefits of Brexit. I think it's OK for people to change their minds over time. The British public do almost in every general election as they decide where to go. But if you look at Liz's journey from her upbringing, which, you know, I hope people will look at, to where she is today, it's an incredible journey. It's a very conservative journey, actually, in terms of climbing a ladder, helping others as they go through that. But ultimately, she's the one that people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who are very much at the forefront of Brexit, who are saying have been the most helpful in the cabinet to deliver on the Brexit promises and also make sure that we're actually making things happen. And that, for me, is ultimately what this is about. It's about delivery, it's about being able to start on day one, and it's about building on experience, which Liz is, I would say, out of all the candidates, and we've got brilliant candidates, but she's the one that I believe is the one who can do that.
Well, Dean Russell, Conservative MP for Watford, supporting Liz Truss. Thanks for joining us this morning on The Briefing and setting out that case. Really interesting there. Well, to our next candidate now, to the man leading the pack amongst MPs. Let's turn to the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak. Sunak boasts an impressive education, attending Winchester College before gaining degrees from both Oxford in the UK and Stanford University in California.
Thank you very much.
Before entering the Commons, Rishi Sunak worked for Goldman Sachs and various hedge funds. As Chancellor, he was in charge of the country's financial response to COVID, including furlough and eat-outs to help out. He's not immune to controversy, having been issued with a fixed penalty notice by the Metropolitan Police alongside Boris Johnson for having some cake in the cabinet room. Interestingly, at the age of 42, he's the youngest contender in this race and would be our youngest Prime Minister since the Earl of Liverpool in 1812. So let's have a listen to what one of his backers, Robert Buckland, said after I caught up with him after that Channel 4 debate on Friday.
I think Rishi Sunak demonstrated why he is the clear choice to be the next Prime Minister. It's tempting to think of this election as just another leadership election, but it's about who sits in the chair in September, who's going to make the big decisions on the economy, who's going to tame the beast of inflation. And I believe that Rishi Sunak, head and shoulders, is the person who demonstrated tonight why he is able to rise to that challenge.
There were moments in this debate this evening where Rishi Sunak was defending his tax rises. He was saying that he believes in spending more on public services. Did he sound particularly Conservative this evening?
Oh, I think he sounded in the best traditions of Conservative chancellors who aren't frightened sometimes to tell the truth why it is important that we fund our public services and balance the books. And there will be times when tax burdens have to rise, and there will be times when tax burdens will fall. But as he said, we win elections to cut taxes. We don't cut taxes to win elections. And I think that his relentless focus on inflation, just like great Conservative chancellors like Geoffrey Howe and Nigel Lawson before him, marks him out as the person who understands what it is to be a Conservative. And that's why I'm supporting him so strongly.
He has this relentless focus on inflation now, yet his initial response to the inflation crisis was to spend £37 billion. At one moment, he raised a tax that brought in £5 billion, only to spend a further £13 billion. Where is his newfound fiscal conservatism coming from? Has it always been there?
I think that Rishi Sunak has always been what we describe as a fiscal conservative. I think he's realistic that we face the unprecedented challenge of COVID. I sat round the cabinet table with him. We made the big decisions to save the economy and do what it took. Of course, there are consequences from that and consequences from quantitative easing, which, let's face it, Tom, has been with us since the economic crisis of 2008. It's clear to me that we need a Conservative government to tame the beast of inflation, and you do that through balancing the books. You do that through a credible economic policy. You don't play fast and loose with the economy. Conservatives are all about economic sound management, and that's why I think at this really challenging time for us, Rishi Sunak is the right choice.
This debate kicked off with a question on trust, and Rishi Sunak found himself having to apologise. He has exactly the same number of fines as Prime Minister Boris Johnson does for breaking his own COVID rules. Did he address that squarely tonight?
I thought he did. I thought he showed why it is important to remember that be you e'er so high, the law is always above you. And what happened to him was an application of the rule of law, which is, I think, one of the cornerstones of what we are as a civilised country. He accepted the fine, he didn't challenge it, he's explained what happened, and I think that because of that straightforward approach that he took to that, we can read into it a wider straightforwardness, a wider sense of honesty about what he wants to tell the British people about the scale of the economic challenge that faces us. And I think that integrity, that honesty, that straightforwardness really shone through tonight.
A lot of Conservative members will be worried about Rishi Sunak, seeing him as the man who wielded the knife against Boris Johnson. We understand from certain briefings that Boris Johnson doesn't particularly want Rishi Sunak to become Prime Minister. Might that hurt him in this race?
Well, look, I'd be very surprised if the Prime Minister expresses a view about his immediate successor. I've read the briefings. I'm not going to comment about who might have said what to whom. I think what is clear is that when we were in Cabinet together, we took some pretty tough decisions about, first of all, getting Brexit done, and then secondly, saving the economy during COVID. I've got no doubt that with the experience that Rishi Sunak has had, the experience that I've had with him negotiating public spending settlements, I see a man who is ready and willing and able to get on with that job from day one, which is exactly what the British people need.
Now, just finally, I'm sure that if I asked you who won this debate, you'd say your man, Rishi Sunak. Who tonight was Rishi Sunak's biggest competition?
Look, I thought that it was an impressive debate. I was particularly impressed by Kemi Badenoch. I think she comes across clearly with great conviction. She's somebody I've admired for a long time. I thought Tom Tugendhat spoke, as he usually does, with vigour and absolute conviction. I thought, looking at it objectively, what we saw were candidates from all parts of our society. We had women candidates with people from an ethnic minority background. It's an extraordinary offering that the Conservative Party is now giving, not just to members, but to the wider electorate. And I'm excited by that. I'm proud to be part of such a diverse and modern team.
Robert Buckland, thank you.
Thanks.
Secretary of State for Wales, Robert Buckland there. Well, now at this point, I should say that we won't have time this morning for all 5 candidates. If you want to hear the case for the others, of course, you'll have to tune in tomorrow morning. That's a cheeky little plug from me there. Well, now it might seem that the only story in Westminster today is that leadership contest. Government business does, however, continue. New drug control plans could see recreational drug users have their passports and driving licences seized, with a new 3-strike-style deterrent. These proposals are published in a new white paper today entitled Swift, Certain, Tough: New Consequences for Drug Possession. Well, I'm joined now by Jay Jackson, who's head of public affairs at VoltFAS, an independent research and advocacy organisation that seeks to reduce the harm drugs pose to individuals and society. Welcome to the programme, Jay. I suppose, first of all, is this white paper what you were expecting?
Hi, Tom. Great to be with you. Probably not, no. I mean, so the government published their 10-year drug strategy in December, And it was a bit of a mixed bag. There was a lot of sort of tough on drugs, classic sort of conservative rhetoric. But underneath, there was a reverse to the cutting in funding for drug treatment services that we've seen since 2010. That's been cut by 40%. They reversed that. And there was also some really interesting interventions around harm reduction, stuff like that, that, as we can see in this white paper, doesn't really sit well with that rhetoric. It's a bit confused. And I was saying to somebody earlier, it's almost classic Johnsonism, really. It's cakeism. It's having your cake and eating it in terms of drugs, and having the tough rhetoric, but actually realising that we've had 50 years of policy failure on this and something needed to change.
So this is very, very interesting. The title of this white paper is saying it's getting tough on drugs, and that's the entire way that it's packaged. But actually inside it, this three strikes strategy, does that mean that actually, to some extent, there's an easing up on recreational drug users, treating it more as a health issue with courses rather than a criminal justice issue?
I would say that's pretty much spot on, yeah. Look, we know that criminalisation doesn't work, and what this white paper, we haven't seen the full details yet, but from what I understand, the three-strike system of, doing a drug awareness course, then having a caution, and then eventually being pursued through the civil courts, is essentially decriminalising drug possession without saying it. That's the reality of this. And it's really interesting to think about how this is going to affect the Conservative Party leadership contest, because you'd expect that the candidates are going to be asked about this today. And this is a significant change in approach. And, Priti Patel may not have much longer left in the Home Office. She clearly wanted to get this out because she understands that this is the only way that we're actually going to make a dent in terms of taking money and power out of the hands of criminal gangs and reducing the harms that drugs cause to individuals and society.
It is fascinating because in the last Conservative leadership contest in 2019, there was an entire week devoted to the various candidates and their drug taking in the past. Almost every candidate, I think at that stage, apart from Sajid Javid, admitted to at the very least having smoked weed in the past. We don't seem to have the same focus on drug misuse or indeed policy so far in this debate.
No, that's right. Maybe it's just because we have a much more boring spread of candidates. I don't know. But yes, you're right. Last time we had Rory Stewart admitting to smoking opium. We had cocaine with Michael Gove and Boris Johnson, Jeremy Hunt with his cannabis lassie. But this time, like you say, it hasn't featured. And obviously, look, I think the context is clearly different. But hopefully this will get it on the agenda. And I think, I wrote a piece for VoltFast outlining what the potential dynamics might be in terms of the different leadership candidates. And there are a couple who I think would be more likely to pursue drug policy reform than others. We know that Liz Truss, back in her Liberal Democrat student days, was a free the weed campaigner. And I think Rishi Sunak, with his sort of Cameroon socially liberal tendencies, might be someone who would look at that. Whereas I think, someone like Tom Tugendhat, for example, who's spoken a lot in Parliament about the destruction that he saw drugs cause in countries such as Afghanistan, might be less sort of favourable to those reforms. But look, all I can say is I think this is a really great start for drug policy reform. Prisons, criminalisation, we know doesn't work. 15% of people in prison are on drugs. That's how much of a breeding ground for drugs these places are. And over 30% of people in those prisons are there on drug offences. So it's absolutely time for a new approach.
Well, Jay Jackson, thank you so much for setting that out. Sometimes it's really interesting to dive between the difference in rhetoric and actual policy. Really fascinating stuff there. Jay Jackson, Head of Public Affairs at VoltFast. Thanks for joining us. Well, now, finally, today, let's turn to another candidate in this leadership election. Kemi Badenoch has been the Conservative MP for Saffron Walden since 2017. She's been an Equalities Minister and a local government minister. And one of her big supporters in Parliament is Gareth Bacon MP, who joins us now. Gareth, thanks for joining us. I suppose Kemi is running a little bit behind amongst MPs. And, of course, it's MPs that make sure people get through to the final rounds. What does Kemi need to do to make it through today?
I think she just needs to do what she's been doing so far. I mean, people need to remember that Kemi only decided to stand for this leadership campaign about 9 days ago. She didn't have a funded campaign team up and running. She didn't have lots of people preparing her briefs. She's got so far on the strength of her own personality and her own will. And let's be honest, it's been a bit of a success. She's so far knocked out the Chancellor of the Exchequer, a former Foreign Secretary. She's beaten the Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee twice, and she's knocked out the Attorney-General. This is a really stellar performance from Kemi, and she's starting to attract support from all wings of the party. It's really quite incredible. So today I think it's just a question, there's a series of hustings taking place before the vote today. I think she needs to carry on doing what she's doing, and I think we might get a pleasant surprise this afternoon.
It's fascinating to see members' surveys, particularly the Conservative Home website, which has been accurate in the past, is saying that Kemi, were she placed against any other candidate in this race, she'd beat them were she to get to the final two. However, amongst your colleagues, might that be a tough challenge, given that she's never held a seat in cabinet, she's been a junior minister in two different departments, but she hasn't had that really senior experience?
She's not been a cabinet minister, that's perfectly true, but she has had some very tough briefs. I mean, she has led the government's response on things like racial diversity and things like that, and equality. And she's achieved rave reviews for the work she's done there, because she's very, very clear, she's very to the point. Not being in the cabinet, I don't really see that as a handicap at this stage. I think she brings a freshness to the role, which I think my colleagues are starting more and more to find appealing. And you've referenced the Conservative Home polls, and you're quite right to do so. Our members, the Conservative Party members, the more they see of Kemi, it's very clear the more they like.
Well, Gareth Bacon, I'm afraid I wish we had more time to talk through some of her proposals, because it does seem really interesting to these tax ideas and this breaking up the Treasury idea. We'll have to talk to you later in the week, but for now, thanks for joining us on The Briefing. I'm afraid that's it for the show today, and as you heard Gareth Bacon there mention To The Point, it's To The Point coming up next with Patrick Christys and Mercy Maroki. But first, here's the weather.
So your Monday weather is looking to turn very warm or hot through the morning with some long sunny intervals. Let's take a look at the details. So a fine morning for southwest England with very warm sunny spells, a little breezy along the coasts and temperatures reaching 30 or 31 Celsius in a few spots by midday. Lots of sunshine for London through Monday morning and feeling hot with temperatures widely reaching the low 30 Celsius by the start of the afternoon. Plenty of very warm sunny spells for South Wales with some high cloud at times and temperatures reaching the low 30 Celsius by morning's end. And a fine morning for the Midlands with some long sunny intervals and perhaps a little high cloud at times in the northwest. Turning hot towards midday with temperatures reaching into the low 30s Celsius. For northeast England, very warm sunny intervals through Monday morning with temperatures across the region soon rising into the mid to high 20s Celsius inland, a touch cooler along the coast. Increasingly long sunny intervals will develop across southern Scotland on Monday morning, giving plenty of sunshine as we head into the afternoon. Temperatures picking up into the low to mid 20s Celsius. Perhaps some early low cloud across parts of County Fermanagh and County Tyrone at first, but this will soon burn back to leave a fine, warm and sunny day for all in Northern Ireland. So the afternoon will be fine, dry and sunny across most of the UK, turning hot for England and Wales. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of your Monday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.